The final service that turned a restaurant into myth. No announcement was made. No countdown followed. Most guests had no idea it was ending. This story matters now because endings are rarely allowed to be quiet. Closures become spectacles. Farewells are branded. Yet one restaurant chose to disappear without explanation, and in doing so became unforgettable. To understand how a final service transformed a place into myth, we need to return to a night that looked ordinary on the surface. Because today, we struggle to let things end without turning them into content. For years, the restaurant had operated at the highest level. Not flashy, not experimental, just relentlessly precise. It had nothing left to prove. Reservations were steady. The team was stable. The food was confident. And that was the problem. The chef felt it first. The sense that discovery had slowed. That the restaurant was repeating itself perfectly. Every service executed flawlessly, yet something vital was missing. Risk had evaporated. Curiosity had settled. There was no crisis forcing closure. No financial collapse. No scandal. Just a quiet realization. The restaurant had reached its natural end. The decision was kept internal. Only a handful of people knew. No final menu was planned. No tribute dishes prepared. The last services would look exactly like every other night. When the final week arrived, nothing changed. Guests dined as usual. Staff worked as always. Plates left to pass with the same care they always had. No speeches were given. No emotions announced. But inside the kitchen, the air felt different. Every movement carried weight. Every plate felt like a conclusion. The team worked with a focus sharpened by finality. The last service arrived unnoticed. A full room, familiar faces. No one knew they were witnessing an ending, and that quiet choice would shape how the restaurant was remembered forever. As the final services unfolded, the restaurant existed in a strange double state. To the guests, nothing felt different. The pacing was familiar. The food landed with the same confidence. Conversations flowed without urgency. It was, by every visible measure, another excellent night. But for the team, time felt compressed. Each task carried memory. Each station held echoes of earlier versions of themselves. The repetition that once felt routine now felt ceremonial. The chef moved to the kitchen quietly, observing rather than directing. Corrections were rare. Trust replaced oversight. The work no longer needed shaping. It simply needed honoring. Small details gained gravity. The sound of plates stacking. The rhythm of footsteps on the floor. The way the dining room shifted as courses progressed. These moments had always been there. Now they felt finite. No one spoke openly about the ending. Words would have fractured the balance. Silence preserved focus. Everyone understood without needing confirmation. Guests lingered longer than usual, though they could not explain why. Dessert stretched into conversations. Tables delayed departure. Something held them there, subtle and unnamed. Behind the scenes, the team prepared as if for another week. Orders placed, prep completed, schedules written. The future was maintained on paper, even as it disappeared in reality. The final night arrived without announcement. The last plate left to pass unnoticed. The last guest thanked the staff casually. The doors closed as they always had. Only after the room emptied did the wait settle. No applause, no release, just a quiet awareness that something complete had ended. And in that stillness, the meaning of the choice became clear. Endings do not need witnesses to matter. They need intention. The story now moved toward its final understanding. The days after the closure felt unreal. Messages arrived first. Confused, curious, concerned. Guests asked about reservations that no longer existed. Suppliers called to confirm orders that would never be fulfilled. The team gathered without uniforms, without stations. The kitchen felt larger than before. Empty, not abandoned, but released. For years, every surface had been defined by purpose. Now, purpose had stepped away. At first, doubt crept in. Had they ended too soon? Had they mistaken stability for stagnation? The absence of crisis made the decision harder to justify. Nothing had forced their hand, but memory clarified what metrics could not. The restaurant had become flawless, and therefore predictable. Risk had been replaced by mastery. Growth had slowed into repetition. Word spread slowly. No official statement was released. The lack of explanation fueled speculation. Articles appeared, then multiplied. People searched for meaning in the silence. That silence became the story. Guests who had dined during the final week began sharing memories, not of dishes, but of feelings, of calm, of focus, of a sense that something had been complete, even if they didn't know why. The restaurant transformed in retrospect. What was once familiar now felt intentional. The quiet ending reframed every moment that came before it. Each service became part of a closed circle. The myth did not grow from excess. It grew from restraint, from the refusal to overstate significance. The restaurant did not declare itself legendary. It allowed others to decide. And in that distance between experience and explanation, its influence deepened. The final lesson was approaching. The final understanding emerged slowly, long after the doors stayed closed. The restaurant had not vanished. It had settled into memory, untouched by revision or decline. By choosing when to end, it preserved its truth. Nothing overstayed its meaning. Nothing faded into routine. The story remained whole because it was allowed to finish. In the months that followed, the space remained empty. No successor rushed in. No rebrand softened the ending. The absence became part of the legacy. People walked past and remembered how it felt inside. Calm, focused, complete. Chefs spoke about it quietly. Not about techniques, but timing. About knowing when mastery becomes repetition. About the courage required to stop while something still works. Guests remember the restaurant differently now. Each visit replayed with new weight. Small moments felt intentional in retrospect. The ending sharpened beginning. In a culture that demands constant output, this choice felt radical. To step away without explanation. To trust that the work could stand on its own. To allow meaning to form without guidance. The restaurant became a reference point for restraint. A reminder that endings shape stories as much as beginnings. That legacy is not built by longevity alone, but by alignment. Nothing dramatic marked the final service. No spectacle defined the closure. And that was the point. The restaurant did not ask to be remembered. It trusted that it would be. What the quiet ending also demonstrated was a relationship between completeness and myth. Myths are not formed by things that continue indefinitely. They are formed by things that end at the right moment, before decline can revise a memory of what they were at their best. A restaurant that stays open past its natural conclusion does not extend its legacy. It revises it gradually, in a direction shaped by diminishment rather than aspiration. The final impression becomes a lasting one, and the final impression of a thing past its peak is almost always lesser than what came before. The choice to close while still excellent was therefore not merely an aesthetic decision. It was a strategic one, in the deepest sense. It ensured that the memory of the restaurant would be the memory of it at its most complete, rather than the memory of it diminished. Every person who had ever eaten there would carry a version of it that time could not erode, because the restaurant itself had chosen to step outside of time before time could work on it. That choice required a specific kind of confidence. The confidence that the work done was sufficient, that it did not need to continue indefinitely in order to matter, that a complete thing is more valuable than an ongoing one. In a culture that treats continuation as proof of worth, this confidence is rare. Most institutions, most practices, most creative projects continue long past the point at which continuation adds anything, because stopping feels like failure, and failure is understood as negation rather than completion. This restaurant offered a different understanding, that stopping at the right moment is itself a form of mastery, that the ability to recognize completion and honor it without needing external validation or visible audience is as difficult and as valuable as the ability to begin well. The final service was ordinary. The myth it created was not. And the distance between those two things is exactly the size of the choice made to keep the ending quiet. The